How are you doing? Welcome to live stream number 156. It is Friday, folks. We made it. Today is all about CAM. So it's Friday, normally our CAM day. Wednesday is, I think, our new answer Fusion 360 email questions, but Fridays is still CAM. So today is all about CAM. Today we're gonna talk about the Autodesk CAM challenge, and then we're gonna get into into Fusion and throw some toolpath on a part. It's kind of like said, let's set it up here. All right, just want to make sure here after being on the road. Yep, I can see we got people in the live stream, so looks like we're all good. My name is Lars Christensen, and these live streams here is just to try to add a little bit more value to your Fusion 360 experience. If you like the content, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up. If you don't, be honest, thumbs down. That's okay. And of course, your comments is always more than welcome. I assure you, I read them all, and I pretty much answer them all too. All right, so what I want to show you is this website here. Let's start with that. So some of you guys, if you are on Instagram, might be familiar with, in the past, there have been like I think it was called like an Instagram CAM challenge. This has been going on for a few years. My good friend, good colleague, Curtis Chan, who have been running that for some years and giving away some really great stuff. Curtis is doing it again. This year he has moved it over on his manufacturing blog, Manufacturing Lounge it's called. You will find a description or a link for that down in the description area. It's literally manufacturinglounge.com, and you will find this blog post about the Autodesk CAM challenge. So this started back in the day, and here's actually an older entry. This started, I would say 3 years ago maybe, Curtis started doing this, and he did it primarily, he did this on Instagram, and came up with some really great prizes. This year, there's also some really great prizes, including, I think the first prize, you gotta go click the link so you get all the details. Don't trust me. But I think the first prize winner gets a trip to Autodesk University. You gotta get there yourself, but you will get the access to the event. You will get all your hotel paid for. Additionally, you get also get yourself to IMTS in Chicago next, also this fall, and you will get the event paid and you will get your hotel paid. I think that's first prize. There's all different kinds of things going on. There's a GoPro's giving away. There's tooling, all kind of good, exciting CAM stuff. So you definitely need to make sure you click the link in the description area of the video so you can read all the different details. I believe the shut-off date is the 22nd of May. So that's why I needed to make sure I did this live stream today. Now I know that some people might not, we have people on different skill level, and I know there's people in here who probably have already worked hard on their entries for this awesome challenge. But some people, this might be a little bit intimidating. And by the way, I know that there's a step file in here because this is also open to people who are using Inventor HSM, PowerMill, and whatever the CAM package we have available at Autodesk. I'm amazed every year they have done these because these people's entries are absolutely amazing and better than I could ever do. But yeah, here you will find that there is a step file you can download, bring into Fusion or whatever you want to do, and then you can win these cool prizes. So yeah, like here's the prizes. So all different kinds of cool stuff. Over $1,000 in a Mary Tool gift card, Harvard, all good stuff. And here's the requirements and stuff like that. So what I thought to do today, people tell me I talk too much, was this Autodesk keychain here right here is one we did a few years ago at least at AU. We did this. We ran these aluminum logos, and I believe that this is the logo that Curtis has fired up too. I actually got the keychain from him, so it's kind of his file. So I thought that today, let's throw some toolpath on this part here, show some tips and tricks, and hopefully that could maybe, I'm hoping, encourage some of you guys to maybe jump on the bandwagon and create some cool content. Remember, you have until May 22nd to put your entry in for the CAM challenge. But if not, that's also fine. So I'm gonna go in and throw some different toolpath on this. Just want to show you some different tips and tricks kind of things I'm thinking. So I'm gonna go in and create a setup as we normally do in the beginning. First thing you always got to do inside of CAM. I'm not gonna go too deep into the setup menu. You will find other live streams where I've done that. Of course, the most important first thing is to get this triad gnomon in the right location, and then you can kind of place it wherever you want your G54 pickup. So that's one thing. Of course, we can also go into the stock in here. You can add a little bit more stock. Now, the stock in here is all for visual when we are actually simulating things. You can, for example, add a little bit in here to hold on to, and you can see we got a little bit more to hold on to in here. But I've covered some of these things in other live streams, in other videos. So I'm going to kind of like just pass over that for right now, because I think there's some cool things I want to show you in here that might be helpful. This is a fairly small part. By the way, I'm going to do this in inches. I'm sorry. This is a fairly small part. So I'm going to go in here and do a facing operation. Normally what we'd like to do to kind of like clean things up. But before we go in and do a big fly cutter, I'm actually going to just go down here to the tutorial library, and I'm going to select a 1/2 inch flat end mill. Because as you will see when I click OK, the preview here, that this is small because this is a 1/2 inch in here. So about, what is that? That is about 12 millimeter diameter cutter or something like that. Now we don't have to select any geometry. We can just hit OK, and Fusion will automatically create kind of like that first facing operation. Of course, you will see, as I always do, simulate often. This is your key into kind of like look into the future of what's going to happen in your machine. I'm going to turn the stock on. I don't think the green shows up very well on the live stream, so I'm going to do wall paint. I think that shows up a little bit better. I'm also going to take in here my toolpath mode to tail. See how you can kind of see the toolpath right now? If you change it to tail, the toolpath will not show until you kind of like hit play. So you can kind of see that it comes behind it. That's called tail. Like a tail on the dog following around here. So this might be the first kind of like toolpath you would do. Now, I'm not going to include feeds and speeds in this live stream here today. That is part of your of your CAM challenge to make things look good. But hopefully this kind of like inspire you maybe a little bit to kind of like think about it entering. So with that, we're faced off the part. That's normal, right? So kind of like clean it up. I'm gonna hit OK, and the next thing we're gonna do is kind of like rough out this part. Now, I'm a big fan of kind of jumping back and forth between 2.5 axis and 3 axis. So I would actually use a 3 axis adaptive clearing here to kind of rough this part out. And I'll show you a couple of tricks with it. So I'm going to hit adaptive clearing, and I'm going to leave it the same tool. And one of the things I many times do when I am doing 3 axis work, if you're a little intimidated by the 3 axis, is I literally just make sure I have a tool selected, and then I hit OK and see what I get. That is many times a lot easier than trying to go in and adjust all different kinds of things. So with that, let me click on Setup 1 again. Click on, not to post the code, on the simulation here. And you can cheat or you can be lazy. If you don't want to see the facing operation again because it's starting here, you can just click on that next toolpath and it'll kind of like speed forward to that have happened. You will see me use that a couple of times. So I'm going to hit play here and we kind of like can see this adaptive clearing coming in and start doing what adaptive is so good at, what is keep a constant load on the cutter, what saves your cutters, it saves your machine wear and tear, and it actually also lets you go a little bit faster. You will see here that it kind of like, the nice thing about the 3D adaptive versus the 2D adaptive is that the 3D adaptive actually tries to go in and will kind of like create a, you will see here kind of like a step selection of it. Now you see here that right now, this last toolpath you saw here, it really did not take anything off the top. It kind of ran just over the top here without doing anything. So remember that I didn't change, besides clicking on the tool, I did not change anything inside the toolpath. We haven't modified this toolpath. So let's go ahead and look at some of that. So I'm going to hit out of this. It looks fairly good, but I got to make a couple of adjustments. So I'm going to go in and right click and hit adaptive to edit it. So the tool is fine. Feeds and speeds, always recommend whatever the manufacturer recommends for you, and then you can play with it afterwards. Now, in the heights tab, and we've talked about the heights tab before, one of the things about the heights tab is, and I made a live stream on it, my recommendation is start from the bottom and work your way up instead of from the top down, because it's kind of like a layer effect in here. And the bottom is normally what we care about too when we are when we're working inside of this. So I just gotta check here quickly, make sure that, all right, we got some people in here. All right, cool. So from the bottom here, model bottom is actually fine, kind of, because it will just machine down to the bottom of this one. But I would actually probably go minus another 50 thousandths just to make sure that I go past the thickness. So when I flip this one over in a fixture, some soft jaws, that I'm actually making sure I get that edge good. And then the reason you saw that cut was made on the top here, that is actually because that it's looking at the top height to be stock top. But we had already kind of like decked it off. If we do model top and we hit OK here on the top, then you will see that now it's not making that cut up on top anymore. So that's kind of like why that happened in there. Another thing, I'm going to go back in and edit it again. The other thing I want to show you is, so when you do adaptive, feeds and speeds, of course, again, use your manufacturers. But in the heights tab, this optimal load is where you make the adjustment. So if you've never used this before, I would probably start out at like something like 100 thousandths, or maybe even a little bit smaller. That's kind of like the width of your cut with the cutter. So be aware of that. Hit OK. It kind of updates here. And if we go in and we now simulate this, again, I'm going to pass through the facing operation, hit the adaptive here, hit the play button. We can kind of see what we got. So now the depth's going to be a little bit deeper by 50 thousandths. It's going to go in and kind of clean this up here, and you will see that we don't get that cut on top. Hope this is useful. Now a couple of other things. Notice over here that we really, with the 1/2-inch cutter, we're really not getting close into that corner here. If I get out of this, don't forget you have the inspection tool right up here. Click inspection, click an edge, and we can kind of see the type of radius we have. I many times look at the diameter, so we need a 1/8 of an inch cutter to clean that corner up. So here's a neat trick. If I right click on the adaptive, I'm going to use this a couple of times today. If I right click on adaptive, I can go in and create what is called a derived operation. And what that means is we're literally taking all the the things inside of adaptive and like the depth of cut, the optimal load or whatever, and we are copying it over into another operation. You can see here we could select all the different type of operations. I'm going to reselect the adaptive clearing. So I'm kind of like almost like copied. I could also duplicated it. I'm going to change my cutter diameter, and I'm going to change it over to a smaller cutter. So in the library, I have a 3/16. So that's a almost the right size to clean up that cutter. I'm going to select that one, hit OK. So that's a smaller cutter. Then in the geometry tab, in the rest milling section, or rest machining, I'm going to change over to from previous operation. What that does is that now Fusion will look at this adaptive here, will look at the previous and make sure that whatever was cut with the first operation is not recut. So now you will actually see that all it's going to do is come in and kind of clean up this corner, because we left stuck there, this corner, and then it's going to start attacking this inside pocket here. So let's go back in and hit setup and look into the future with simulate. And again, if I click now on the 2D, the adaptive, the second operation, you will see what we got here. So we have left a lot of material here and in the inside corners. Now, if I hit play, you will see it's going to come in and clean up kind of like that corner, gets as close as it can with this in these three corners here. Remember that in these adaptive, we have stock to leave on. So we are leaving some cleanup material. It's going to interpolate in here and start cleaning out this pocket here. So you see it's going to clean up like this edge over here too. But come back in here and kind of clean up this area. And right now it's set per levels. So it's going to wrap it in and out. You can actually control that too. But I would use this as my way to kind of like get out that material and rough that out. So we started out with a facing operation. We actually jumped from a 2D, what we call a 2D operation, into the 3D. But now I would probably go back into the 2D again to kind of clean out the outside before we finishing this up with 3D toolpath. So get out of the simulation here, and I'm gonna go in and use a 2D contour to kind of like clean up the outside. So we've left some material on the outside, and we're gonna use a 2D to clean that up. I'll show you a couple of things with that. So one thing that I have, if we go in here and look at the part file, is in my tutorial library, I did not have what is called an 1/8 inch or 0.125 diameter end mill. That's okay. I can go out here, and what I normally just do is I just copy the one I have in here. And I talked about in my previous live streams, we talked about using the libraries over here. But just to show you how to do it on the fly, I'm really just going to right click and say copy tool, right click and paste the tool, and you will see I now have two of the same tool in here. Now this little arrow indicates which ones are active. So this one is not active yet. So I'm going to right click on it again, and I'm going to edit it. And now I can just go into the cutter area in here, and I can now change that to whatever diameter I have, and number of flutes, feet and speeds, and all that. But that gives you that tool. So I'm going to hit OK to that. So now I have that 1/8 inch tool selected here. In the geometry tab here, I can select this outside edge here. So machine around that. I could also start selecting the inside edge, but I would actually probably break this up into multiple operations, just if I have to size things, because this is like this, again, this is going to go into a soft jaw. So maybe you want control that on the outside that doesn't infect the inside. I'll come back and do the inside here. I would probably also, because this is a fairly small cutter, I would probably also go in here and add a multiple depth cuts in here, so you can kind of control the depth of cuts. So if I hit enter here, you will see we get some cuts in here. So that comes in here to clean out kind of like the outside. Then I could do what I did before. Before I did a derived, but be aware of you can duplicate. That's probably what some people said I should have done with that other adaptive. Same kind of thing. I can duplicate the same tool path, added that, go back in here, say I don't want to chain it, but then select I want to machine this inside here. So then that tool path will kind of clean that area up. Now you will see that it will actually machine areas where we maybe don't have any stock. So let's go ahead and simulate this. So if we go to the last tool path here, you will see that now the outside has been cleaned up. But the inside here, if I go and simulate the last tool path, tool's going to come in here and kind of machine across, but there's nothing, it doesn't have anything to machine really at this point until it gets down at the end. It will start hitting. I hope this can be seen. Oh, and one thing I noticed here, you see how I have a little step because I went 50 thousandths deeper with the adaptive. I forgot to do that on the contour. So right click, edit, and we can go in. That's one of the nice things about doing derived instead of duplicate, is that now you can kind of bring these things in with you. Edit both of them here. And minus 0.050. And then again, I will always simulate to make sure that that in the end we will see that now we got that step in there both places. Another thing I want to show you is I also left material on this little edge here. So the contour toolpath can do a couple of different things. If I go in here and do another contour toolpath like I just did before, if I in the contour selection I select this edge, it will only machine that edge. Now when we machine the outside, I turned on depth, multiple depths, but you can also in here turn on multiple finish passes on the radial side. So if I go in here and say I want to make 3 passes of the diameter, half of the diameter step over, you will see that now we get 3 step overs to kind of clean that one up. So be aware of that. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up here at the end. So, and again, I hope this is kind of useful, but I want to take you through kind of like the way I would approach this. Now we come to probably the most interesting part, and that's all this free axis kind of environment in the end here. So if we go in here and we simulate this to the point where we are right now, you will see that we kind of, we kind of finished the outside, we finished this little shelf. I'm not going to drill the hole in this one, but we got to do this area in here. And what toolpath would you select for that? And I think that a lot of people gets a little bit, I would almost say, overwhelmed when it comes to toolpath in the free axis. I'll show you a couple of tips. Now, my default one would be a parallel cut. I'm not going to use that here, but I'm going to select it first just to show you. Let us go in and select the ball end mill because that's what we normally would do for a free axis toolpath. There is actually an 1/8 inch ball end mill in there. If I just hit OK right now, without changing anything, you will see that we actually get that would actually not be this is not a terrible toolpath. And I call this an old mega toolpath, but we already kind of machined these areas on top. We're already done with those. We're really only looking to machine kind of like this transition right here. There's different ways we could eliminate machining the top here. One would be to go back in and edit the toolpath. Maybe we could go in and say the top height is maybe the model top minus some silly 5 thousandths or something. So our starting toolpath is starting 5 thousandths below this top surface. That will give us something like that, but it's really not. It does some funky things over here. And when it comes to doing 3-axis toolpath, many times you kind of like have to work your way around these a little bit. So this is probably not the toolpath I would like to use here. So let me just delete that. The next toolpath that I normally go to would be the contour toolpath. So let me select that. And we still have the right end mill. Let me just hit OK. Let's see what we get on that. And that doesn't really look like it. It does attack these faces here, but it doesn't even, it doesn't seem a good fit for this here. So I'm going to hit OK to that. The next toolpath that I will normally select is the scallop toolpath. So let's select that. And we still have the ball end mills. Let me just hit OK to that and take a look at what that gives us. And that actually maybe doesn't look, that actually, I mean, we don't like the top. But you can see that it kind of starts from the outside and collapsing in. So one of the things we do have within these toolpaths is some options to kind of, right now you will see this toolpath is just doing the entire part. And before I showed you on the parallel cut how we could just lower the start depth, and that would kind of eliminate the top surface. But maybe a more correct way of doing this would be going in and edit that toolpath and go into the geometry selection and change the machining boundary. Now this is set to silhouette, and what silhouette means, think about just blasting a light from the top down on the top, like you held a flashlight right above the part. That is kind of what that scallop toolpath does. But in here you could do a selection of it. Now when it comes to selection, here's the tip of the day, I think. If I select in here, you will see that it's almost like that Fusion tries to select certain areas. See how the chain is not right here. You probably maybe tried that. But what you can do is you can select the chain. You see kind of like how it's going to machine within this L shape here, pickaxe or whatever this is. Then you can select it again, and now you can actually kind of move over, and if you select another edge, you will see here how Fusion actually reselect or reorder things. So if I select right here, this is actually a pretty good boundary of that toolpath I think I want. So I'm going to hit the green check mark here to say OK to that. So now you can kind of see that in green. And if I hit OK now, we actually see something that might actually be somewhat decent in here. That's pretty decent. Now, one thing I haven't talked about is the step over. So let me just go ahead and right click here and go into the step over, and you'll see the step over is half the cutter. This is very rough. I would probably go a lot, and normally I would start with something like 0.25 as my step over. That's still fairly rough. You will see that it's finer. I would estimate that if I was going to do this part here, and this is just a guess, I would probably be between, the highest will probably be 10 thousandths, might be as small as 3 thousandths. But this actually does a fairly good job of kind of cleaning this up here, I think. Let's go ahead and look at it in the simulation. So to rush right to it, I'm just going to hit this the scallop, and then we can hit play. Now I didn't get my ball end mill in there, did I? So right clicking there. Now I might also should add that should be the ball end mill we use. I might also add that I would probably doing semi rough and finishes here for this. So here you will see kind of like this pass. So I would rough. I would have a semi cutter where I would leave some stock to leave on the cutter. But now we will see this is actually I think a pretty good pass to kind of clean this up. However, one thing I noticed here as we are looking at this is that these areas right in here, I hope you can kind of see that on the two radiuses, that is not great. See how we kind of like almost like got bite marks in here with this cutter. And that's another thing that I want to make sure that you think about when you're doing 3-axis machining, and that is many times there's not a finished tool path that does everything perfectly in there. So this tool path here, this scallop tool path, does a really good job, but it kind of, these areas here might not be perfect. So don't always think that you need the perfect tool path. Sometimes you will actually, you can actually go in with multiple tool paths. So another one you should know about would be the pencil tool path. That's a great cleanup tool path. So if I click on that and select that, so that's going to come after the scallop. I make sure I have my ball end mill here. Now that will also look for a step over. So make this step over fairly small. Hit OK. And you will see that will just come in and kind of clean that up. Now that actually goes over here too. And the reason that it goes over here is because I picked it from the drop down. What I should have done was I should have done a right click derived, so that selection set we did inside of this scallop where we made sure the boundary that is carried over into this tool path. So if I did that, so we get this boundary brought over, we don't have to select it again. Let me make I like to make the step over even smaller because it's kind of like a finishing operation. And now you will see that tool path is just cleaning up here. So if we go in and simulate this, then you will see that the last tool path here is just going to come in and just kind of like pencil, like you took a pencil and just smooth out where we have these kind of almost gouge areas right here. This would probably be somewhat my beginning start point if I was going to program this part here. Now I gotta say, and if I bring up, you can kind of see it in that. I shut down the link to the machining lounge. If you look at those parts that Curtis had put in there before, people have done some really nice patterns with the tool path. So this would be how I would normally have done this from a machining standpoint, getting it as nice as possible. But if you ever got a hand on one of these keychains, you will actually see that there was kind of a texture on this surface right here. And the way they got that, when they programmed this, I think the credit for programming these was probably, I would think, either Tim Paul, Angelo, or CJ. But the way they got that was they added a last tool path in here, what is actually a radial tool path. And they would actually still have used that same boundary. So let's select the scallop tool path here and do a derived 3D milling, selecting a radial tool path, still the ball end mill. In the geometry tab, they would have put the center point somewhere around where this edge is here. And let me just hit OK. So you can kind of like see what that radial does. It comes from the center and kind of like works its ways out. Now, it looks pretty good on this surface here, but you will see that it also machined on the back side. So what I assume they did was they went back into the tool path, they edited, and they turned on avoid surfaces, and then you could just select these surfaces here, hit OK, and now you will see that tool path only touches that, and they machined that a little bit deeper with a bigger spacing on it, so they ended up getting a little bit deeper. And I'm not quite sure if they actually just went into to this here and offset the down, played around with the stock end here. So I hope that this year kind of like inspired some of you guys to think about putting an entry in to the CAM challenge. The link is in the description area of this video here, and some cool prizes. I mean, you can win entry and hotel for AU and for IMTS this year in Chicago. AU is in Vegas, so I think that IMTS is probably in September, maybe. I haven't looked it up, and AU is probably October, November area. But you got to get yourself there. But then you will get your hotel paid for. You will get your entry fees in there, plus all the other cool giveaways that Curtis have kind of set up in this one here. It's really cool, great thing. So make sure you click the description area to see that. And I hope that this kind of like throwing some toolpath on here, how I would attack this. I hope that you find this somewhat inspirational for a Friday. Really appreciate you taking the time to watch these live streams. It is Friday, man. End of the week. I think that I will say that ends live stream number 156. I hope you have a good week planned. As always, thumbs up if you like this, thumbs down if you don't want to waste your time. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel also, I really appreciate it. That's how I kind of can go to my boss and say, hey, look, people are actually watching this. So with that, I hope you have an awesome day. I'm going to end this broadcast. If you're watching the recording, thank you. If you're in the live stream, in the chat, I'm going to come in there and say hi to everybody. So take care, and looking forward to see you on Monday.